Hey, what's up? My name is Michael Nunez. I'm here with Mashable tech reporter Jake Kroll, and this is Technically Speaking. We're just getting back from a major Google event here in New York City today, where Google launched a bunch of new hardware. So Google announced a new phone today. It's called the Pixel 3, and they have a larger version called the Pixel 3 XL. And this is meant to take on the Apple's iPhone. So the new iPhone XS and the new iPhone XS Max. It's a lot of letters to say all at once. So Jake, how does the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 3 XL stack up against Apple's iPhone?
They're definitely up there. They have the latest processing power, so you're going to get a Snapdragon 845 with around 4 gigs of RAM inside each. So it's kind of the equivalent of how Apple masters their software with their hardware. Google's trying to do the same thing here with Android.
Interesting. Because usually people buy Android, when they buy Android, they're buying things like Samsung,
yes,
LG, OnePlus. So this is the Google phone. Yeah. Is it really that much different than the Samsung, though?
It's definitely cleaner. I'm not a big fan of Samsung's user interface, so I'm probably a little...
And for people that don't know, what is the user interface? Can you explain
the user interface is kind of like the very graphic intensive and all the preloaded apps that come on the phone. So like with Samsung, you know, they change up all the app icons, and you have extra widgets and stuff, and it kind of slows down the experience.
So it's customized software that's preloaded onto the phone.
Yeah.
And so it's not just, I guess, what they call pure Android, right? And so what is it called in Samsung's case?
So Samsung TouchWiz.
Okay, so it's called Samsung TouchWiz. It's like their version of Android, and that means that the icons look a little bit different, messages are a little bit different. It's actually its own Samsung app, whereas Google has its own app. And on the Pixel, you have something called pure Android. So can you explain to people what that is and why that matters?
So some people call it bare bones. It's super, no bloatware, just the Google apps. It's Android as Google sees it. So for starters, you get the Google Assistant works with everything, which is really nice if you're a big fan of that. But you also, you know it's going to run because it doesn't have any of that extra stuff put in. So you don't have like extra apps, extra graphical, stuff going on top. So there's no need for extra optimization. But you also get software updates sooner, security patches come through much sooner. So you get a very clean experience that just kind of works out of the box.
And so I know that must be a big thing for Android users, because a lot of, I used to use Android a few years ago, and one of the big complaints for a long time was that it would take a really long time for updates to roll out to these phones. So, I'd get a new Samsung Galaxy S4 or S5, and then a new version of Android would come out, and it would take months for me to actually get that update. And eventually I went to the iPhone because I couldn't bear to have the outdated software that was on Samsung and some of these other phones. But you're saying that the Google Pixel should not run into that problem. Is that true?
Not at all. So they've been really, really good about keeping support for previous Pixels, and you can expect to get updates regularly on them. And you don't have to wait, and you don't have to be worried, with the privacy-centric stuff that's going on. You don't have to be worried about missing a security update. And, even with like your Galaxy S4 that you mentioned, you normally have to wait for carriers to approve those updates. But most Pixels are unlocked unless you get the Verizon one, but Google works with them to deliver those updates as soon as possible.
Amazing. So with the Google Pixel, you're getting the latest software. It's going to be easier to update over time, which is obviously attractive for anyone that wants to have the new and shiniest new version of Android. Let's talk a little bit about the hardware in this phone, specifically the cameras. I know a lot of people like to use their phones to take photos for social media and for a variety of other reasons. How does the Google Pixel 3's camera look at first glance? I know you've had limited exposure to this thing, but what are your first impressions, and what did you think of today's announcement?
On paper, it seems good. They didn't really talk about the specs, more so the features at the event, although it does have the same 12 megapixel lens with some updated sensors behind it, but there is a camera bump on it now. Which was not there previously, so they're kind of echoing Apple a little bit there. But they have some really, really cool software features. Something called Top Shot allows you, when you take a photo, like let's say you're getting somebody jumping into a lake, it takes a little bit, single shots before and after, and then it'll recommend using AI which shot has the person jumping or which eyes are open, or if they sneeze in the middle, it'll make sure not to give you that one.
Top Shot. So that just means it finds the best moment in a few seconds span. That's kind of like live photos, it sounds like.
Yes, essentially.
Which is on the iPhone for people that may not
Yes.
know that. Okay, cool. So it has a good camera. How many megapixels?
12 megapixels.
Does that matter? Do people still care about that at this point?
So it's 12 megapixels. It's not really an upgrade from last year, but megapixels don't really change year to year anymore, is what we're seeing. A lot of them, Google's very strong about sticking with the single lens camera, which I know you have some feelings on with the
I do.
original.
Well, because I'm looking at these new iPhones, and the only reason I would upgrade is for the camera. And because I have an iPhone 7, and like a lot of people, my iPhone has a single lens camera, so it's just one circle on the back, whereas the new ones have two cameras and dual cameras. Excuse me. And so each camera serves a different purpose. One's really good at taking landscape photos. One's really good at taking portraits, is my understanding, right?
Essentially, yeah.
And so I just kind of want that. I'm basically ready to get that upgrade. It feels like it feels like phones have fewer and fewer upgrades that matter. Yeah. And one of the few places you can actually see improvements is in the camera year to year. So it seems like the iPhones are the closest to a DSLR. They're not quite to like mirrorless standards or the professional grade photography, but they're pretty darn close at this point. And for the untrained eye, I would say it's almost indistinguishable in many cases.
Definitely.
So I would be interested in trying the Pixel 3 against a professional grade photo. I wonder if it would hold up against something like the iPhone. With only, because this also only has a single lens, right? This new Pixel 3.
Single lens across the Pixel 3 and the 3 XL.
Is that going to matter?
I think to some degree. I've noticed I played it with the Pixel 2 XL a lot and the original, and you kind of always have the issue, portrait mode may not be as good because you don't have the wide angle and the standard angle, which is a big issue for some people. But I think putting it to test against an iPhone or against a DSLR or maybe even the LG V40, if you wanted the phone with 3 cameras on the back now, it could show a difference. I mean, AI and software can only do so much when you take a photo.
Right. I totally agree there. Okay, so last thing to talk about with the Pixel is the price. I think the Pixel 3 starts at $799, so about $800, and the Pixel 3 XL starts at about $899 or about $900. How does that compare to the iPhone? And are you really saving any money if you decide to get this phone?
So the iPhone XS starts at $999, and the XS Max is $1,099. So you're saving a little bit, but not really that much.
It's about $100, right?
Yeah, it's around $100
per phone.
And this is about, just for the Pixel 3 to put into context where the Pixels have come from, it's about $100 more than what they used to cost. So Google's jacking up the price a little.
Interesting. Okay.
And you finally get a higher end build with it. It's a matte glass, which is kind of interesting. It's like glass etched, which enables wireless charging on the Pixels, but it's cheaper, but not by much.
Interesting. Okay. And so, why are these phones getting so darn expensive? I feel like suddenly everything costs near $1,000. It wasn't always the case. For a long time, these phones were $600, $700, and then you'd have some of that cost taken away by the carrier. You'd sign a 2-year contract. Suddenly, you're paying like $200 for a brand new phone. Yeah. Now it's really hard to get a deal like that. What the heck is going on? Is this basically something we have to get used to? Are we always going to have to shell out a ton of money for these new phones?
I think unfortunately that's where we're heading. The iPhone 10 kind of broke that. It gave us that $1,000 breaking point. Samsung followed it up with the Note 9 and with the Note 8, but it's definitely getting more expensive. I think it fits in with the whole wireless carrier strategy where they want to get as much money as possible, and they don't have to subsidize anymore. So you end up tacking an extra $40 or $50 a month to your bill. It gives you the perception that you might be saving some money. But it's also, Apple and Google, they'll probably say, well, we're using higher end materials. We're giving you an experience like no other.
Is that true though? I mean, I feel like I've seen a lot of phones on your desk in the past couple months that are nearly indistinguishable. Sometimes I think I'm looking at an LG and it's a Huawei, and they're all basically the same. Isn't that true?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, it really comes down, I think, to personal preference and your brand allegiance to some degree. I mean, I personally use an iPhone, and I like that it kind of fits in with the whole Apple ecosystem. iCloud, and they sucked me into paying for Apple Music and iCloud storage every month. But some people really love the Pixel. They think the camera's great on it. Some people, and you also get the unlimited photo storage. And then some people like LG because they kind of, they push that media-centric. They still have a headphone jack. which nobody else does.
That's nice. That's a nice benefit. Yeah, no dongles.
Which is super nice. And you could also say LG like is the only one that really tried something different here because they put 3 cameras on the back. I mean, Google did 2 on the front for a selfie, but aside from that, the iPhone stayed pretty stagnant, and so has the Pixel.
Interesting. Okay, so Jake, any final thoughts on these phones? You mentioned the Pixel 3 starts at $800. It has a 12 megapixel camera. It's a really good camera. It builds on last year's model, which many considered was best of class. It has an OLED screen again. It comes with unlimited photos. Is that true? So, what final thoughts do you have? Would you recommend this phone for people that are looking for a new one? Should they go check this out?
I think it's definitely, between this and it's a high-end Android phone, so I think it comes down to personal preference. I'd like to try it out a little more, but I think on paper it has the specs of a 2018 flagship. I think some people really, stay true to Google's AI photo technology and the software. So I think it seems like a pretty solid phone. It looks really nice from the brief time that we saw it, and I'd say it could be okay. Would you recommend it as of right now on paper? Or?
I would say no. It's hard for me to recommend the Pixel 3. I think the the Pixels haven't really sold all that well, and I think it's because the AI is not quite there yet. I think part of the part of the selling point for the Pixel is that it has really strong artificial intelligence. Google's updating that pretty significantly. At least within this year, they've updated it pretty significantly. Yeah. They're changing the user interface. It's getting easier to use. But I just don't think it's as easy to use as my iPhone. I don't think that the data is as easily protected. I don't like, Android has a lot of security issues that people don't talk about. So it's unrelated to the phone, but I think the core software is riddled with security threats. And ultimately, I just kind of like iMessage. I kind of like some of the things that come with my iPhone. So, like you said, a lot of it comes down to brand loyalty. For me, I'm an iPhone guy, and I would probably recommend an iPhone to most of my family and friends. Yeah. Google announced a bunch of new products today. One of them was something called the Home Hub. So this was right after the phone. I think they announced this thing that's kind of like a tablet. Yeah. It's a little bit like a smart speaker. It reminds me of the Amazon Echo. Jake, can you tell us exactly what this thing is and what people are supposed to do with it?
Definitely. So it's a little confusing, but think of it as the command central of the Google ecosystem for your house. Okay. It's same size as an iPad mini pretty much, around 7 inches. It's stationary, so you can't move it from room to room unless you physically unplug it from the wall.
And where are you supposed to put this thing? It's a tablet that just sits on your kitchen counter or something?
So you can put it, they showed that you can get recipes with it, so it can help you cook, but it also works as a music player. So you could put it in the living room with you. You could use it as an alarm clock next to your bed.
Interesting. And so basically it's just this tablet that sits there, and I'm expected to talk to this thing like my friend, like HAL 9000 or something.
Definitely. you can control your home with it. So if you're baked into the Google ecosystem, it kind of makes sense to some degree, but it's also very repetitive to the Home Max, and Home Mini. They're non-visual speakers because it does everything the Google Assistant can do.
Okay, so for those that might not be familiar, Google released something called the Google Home.
Yes.
A year ago, right?
I want to say around
about a year ago. And so that's their smart speaker.
Yes.
So the Google Home is exactly like the Amazon Echo. It's just a speaker that sits there. You talk to it. You can ask it questions like, what's the weather? Yeah. Can you play me a Coldplay song or whatever you're into? And that speaker will do those things on command, right?
Definitely.
And this adds a visual element to the speaker now.
Yes. So you can see, so like as a use case, in the morning when you wake up, you can ask the Google Home for traffic reports, but now it can automatically tell you that and be like, your commute this morning, Mike, is going to be 20 minutes.
Oh, interesting.
So it can have that. It'll have those visual cues that you can't really. It's a big affordance for it because you have the visual stuff now.
Right, because what you're saying is like the speaker. If I say like, "Hey Google, how long is it going to take me to get to work?" It'll say, about 20 minutes or something like that. Yeah. But it won't be able to show me that route and show me the traffic.
Not at all.
But the new thing, this thing called the Google Home Hub.
It's kind of a mouthful.
It can actually show me that information. It'll show me traffic reports?
Yes. So you'll see it on the side. In their press shot, they have it like on the side, and on the other side, you see the time or the weather for the day. So kind of what's important to you. So using Google's big push for AI and their machine learning, it'll learn about you over the course of the day or two.
That's kind of creepy, but kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I can get down with that. The real question is, how much does something this goofy cost? You know, you're basically bringing this piece of spyware into your house.
Definitely.
You're feeding it a bunch of information about your daily life, and you're going to pay a huge amount of money to do this. How much, though?
So it's only $149.
Okay, it's not
Which is
that
not. I
bad.
thought it was going to be like upward to like 200.
300 or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. So, but this is 150.
Yes. So they're
$149.
undercutting Amazon for the Echo Show, which is $229.
Oh yeah. See, $229 is a lot to pay for.
It's a
I think
lot
like
for what
one of
it
these.
is.
I don't even know, like informational screens that you can talk to.
Yeah.
And so 150 is kind of the sweet spot for me. That's actually something I could get behind.
It's not that bad, right? And it looks nice. It has like that mesh coating around it and like some nice fluorescent colors.
Yeah, I feel like that's like, you know, a night out sometimes can cost that much. A big night out.
Big night out. I'd
A
say.
birthday night out. But still, you know, I feel like that's not a bad gift, or like I could easily see myself, you know, giving a gift to myself.
I could see that also.
And going and getting this thing. Okay, cool. So I guess, is there anything else that we should know about the Google Home Hub? We know that you can kind of ask it questions. It has this 7-inch display that it can show you things like the weather and traffic reports and other, you know, give you other information about your queries. Is there anything else that this thing does?
So
or?
there's no camera on it.
No camera, so
is
no
kind
video calls.
No video calls whatsoever.
Weird,
I guess
okay.
is Google Duo dead now, or you know, it's kind of.
Yeah, I assumed that this thing would have a camera. I'm glad you said
Yeah.
that. Okay, interesting.
So with the no camera being on it, it's kind of, you know, Google's being like, we're your friend to some degree. From a privacy angle, you don't have to worry about them spying on you from that degree. Like a hacker cannot, you know, chomp on their keys and get in to view you.
I see what you're saying. So
Yeah.
it's one less thing to worry about with
Yeah.
the camera. So the fact that there's no camera on this thing probably makes it a little easier for everyone. So we don't have to worry about people, you know, hackers coming in, infiltrating our systems, spying on us through our webcam. So you're saying that there's no camera, and basically that equates to like less worry, and it's just like, but it also means one less thing to do with it. You cannot.
You can't do video calls with it, which could be a disappointment to some people. I mean, I have not used the Echo drop-in feature because I think it's a little creepy, but you know, you can't video call on this, so that might be a big, you know, kind of disadvantage for some consumers.
Okay, interesting. And so, is there anything else, Jake, that you feel like people should know about before they go and get this thing? Because $150 is a pretty good price, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely at $150. It's open to all consumers, I think. If you're in the Google ecosystem, I think consider it. If you're not in the Google ecosystem, don't necessarily go for it, because I mean, you're not going to get the full advantage of it. That's not to say if you have an iPhone, though, don't go for it, because you won't be able to do everything. There is the Assistant app for the iPhone, so you can still get some of that control. But if you have Philips Hue lights or, you know, like a Nest doorbell, there's some really nice integrations between Google and Nest where this thing can act as a viewfinder.
So you're saying if you have a smart home, if you're buying smart home things, the Google Home Hub is kind of like the ideal companion for that stuff?
I really think so, and it's affordable at $150.
Cool. Yeah, even for me, I don't know, as like a music player, as a traffic report machine, I don't know, $150 is a little, it's a lot. It's something I'll definitely be thinking about going forward. I'm not going to rule it out, though. I like the idea of it, and I might actually get it.
Yeah.
Google announced something called the Pixel Slate today at a media conference in New York. This was in addition to the phone, in addition to the Home Hub. But the Pixel Slate is a tablet, basically, that kind of works like a laptop, kind of works like a tablet. Jake, what the heck is this thing? Why would anyone want this? Who asked for this? Break it down for us, please.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody asked for it, but essentially it's a Chrome OS tablet. So Google's optimized Chrome OS to be in the Pixel Slate as this on-the-go mobile companion. The base thing for starting at $599, you get a 12.3-inch tablet. So they were saying, you know, there's over 6 million pixels in it, and it's around 239 pixels per inch, which is really nice. But you have to pay another $199 for a keyboard, which does a really nice, easy attachment. But it's essentially the Pixelbook from last year, but for more consumers because it's not near $1,000. And if you're a person who's on the go, wants a device for work and play, Google seems to think that the Pixel Slate is going to be for you.
Interesting. Okay, so let's recap here. So it's a tablet. It's sold as a tablet for how much?
It starts at $599 just for the tablet itself.
Okay, so you buy a Google tablet at $600, and then you're supposed to attach a detachable keyboard to this thing. It's like a keyboard cover, I guess.
It's like a folio case. It has a trackpad on it, strangely rounded keys for $199.
Okay, for $199. So that brings the total price up to, can you do the math? $800.
$800 plus. If you want the Pixel Pen, it's another $100.
Okay, so if you get the pen on top of it, it's $900 total cost.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you have basically a tablet that looks like a laptop.
100%.
So it's basically like a Surface.
Yes, it screams Surface and kind of maybe even Surface Go-esque.
But Surface runs full Windows. This thing runs Chrome OS.
Yes.
And Chrome OS is built for just internet use, right? Or is that a misunderstanding of the
For the
operating
most part,
system?
I think it's gotten, they've bulked it up in recent years. So you can get some, I guess, third-party apps for it. You can get the Play Store on it, so Android apps work on it. You can get things like Adobe Acrobat. There's a much dumbed-down version of Photoshop you can get for it. You have full access to the Google Suite. So if you're kind of baked into their ecosystem, you get docs, sheets, slides, all that good stuff. But for that price, you can't really do everything on it. Like, you can't go and play, like old video games on it. You can't get those really graphic-heavy, intensive, applications like Premiere will not run on this thing.
Well, I've heard the Android apps on Chrome OS are a little bit shaky at the moment. Is that true?
It was a mixed bag. I tested it out most recently on Acer's version of a Chromebook tablet, and the experience was downright dreadful for the most part.
Wow.
So I'm hoping Google, they seem to have kind of spiced it up a little and made some optimizations, but it doesn't just fall on Google. It falls on these third-party app developers to update their stuff and be like, listen, we need to meet these guidelines. Interesting.
But that just means, so if as long as the Android app is fully up to date, it should work in Chrome OS?
Theoretically. That is what Google has said. But, if it's not an app that's meant for that big of a screen, or if they didn't update the resolution for it, 12.3 inches is a lot bigger than, like a 6-inch phone.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. So this is kind of a weird one. So, and how big is this thing, by the way? How big is the Pixel Slate?
So it's a 12.3-inch tablet. So think of it like a little bit bigger than the MacBook from Apple, but a little bit smaller than the 13-inch MacBook Pro.
Okay, cool. So it's basically like laptop size. It's not much bigger, not much smaller. Okay, so just to recap, it's 12.3 inches. It costs $600 for just the tablet. It's an additional $200 for the keyboard, and then it's an additional $100 for the pen. Yeah. But it seems like the pen is a little bit less necessary than the keyboard.
Yeah, it
probably
doesn't seem as essential as it is for the iPad.
And then who is this marketed toward? Because as we've kind of mentioned, Chrome OS was originally built for internet use only. There are some offline apps. You can get some Android apps on there, but again, keyword being some. Not all Android apps work on this, and there's not a huge variety of of applications. So why would someone pay close to $1,000 for a machine that seems to be incomplete?
It's an excellent question. I think it's kind of what Google did with the Pixelbook and, what they've done with hardware in the past, in that it's this premium mixture of hardware and software for a device that's not for everyone. They tried to market it on stage at the event today. At their fall 2018 hardware launch, that it's built for work and play equally. You can stream Netflix on it, but you can also write a term paper or fill out an expense report. And I don't see it necessarily doing that for everyone. If it's supposed to be on the go, why not throw an LTE? There's no LTE, so no, you need
like
Wi-Fi.
4G LTE.
Yeah, so there's no network connection at all and no option for it. But the price is definitely going to keep it out of some people. Like, I don't necessarily see a college student going for this.
Right, and is it true that there are cheaper Chrome tablets and Chrome laptops?
Yes.
Chrome OS.
Definitely. The one from Acer starts at $329. You can get like a Chromebook for somewhere probably around $250 to $300 for a basic one.
Wow, so it's practically double the price, but it's cutting-edge hardware. Very interesting stuff. I'm excited to try that one in particular because I'm either going to hate it or love it, and I'm excited to see what that's all about. Okay, so Jake, here's a shocking one. Definitely something we sort of expected, but was still quite a surprise. Facebook announced recently that it is going to be launching something called the Facebook Portal. This is a voice conferencing device that's supposed to go into your home, and it's kind of like a piece of spyware, you could say. This is a tablet with the webcam. It's basically like an iPad that stands up straight, and it's built with a bunch of Facebook software. And it's supposed to make it easier for you to video conference with family and friends and do a couple of other things. It's similar to other products we've seen, like the Google Home Hub, which was announced at a press event by Google in New York recently, and also similar to something called the Amazon Echo Show, which is, again, it's kind of like this tablet that just sits on your counter and lets you video conference with people that you know. Jake, can you walk us through what the heck the Facebook portal is, what makes it different than those other two devices, and why everyone's kind of freaking out about this new product?
Definitely. It's certainly a strange device. What I think it boils down to here is you're paying either $200 or $349 for the Portal Plus, and essentially it's a device meant to connect with Facebook and to use their platform to chat with others. So it's running a stripped-down version of Messenger. So you can connect with people who don't have a portal, because obviously not everybody's going to want Facebook in their home. I don't. But you can it's really for video calling and connecting with people. There's not much else to it. It has Alexa on it, but it's very limited at launch. And it just seems like a strange step for Facebook to go back into hardware.
And what do you mean back into hardware?
So originally, a couple years back, Facebook partnered with HTC for the first phone, or the HTC First, essentially, which was the Facebook phone that ran a customized version of Android. So essentially, it was the Messenger app as a user interface on top. So different graphics than normal Android, had those cool little circles where you could bounce them around on the top, so you could easily message with people. But it was ultimately a failure. It didn't work out.
Okay, cool. So let's rewind for a second, just in case people are getting a little bit confused here, because we got a lot going on. So Facebook released something called the Portal and the Portal Plus. One is $200, one's $350. What's the difference between those?
So screen size.
Screen size, okay.
And the speaker size, essentially. It's the same software across the board.
I see. Okay, so there's a small one and there's a big one. And what these look like are basically not TVs. They look like tablets that are basically like bolted onto a smart speaker, right?
Essentially.
And but this doesn't work like the Echo, and it doesn't work like the Google Home, because you can't just ask it random questions. It's mostly for video conferencing. Is that true?
So it's mostly for video conferencing. Alexa is baked into it.
So you can ask it what the weather's like, for example.
You can, but it's not as in-depth. So like you can't use third-party skills at launch. So you can't like use other apps or play Spotify on it, for instance.
I see. Okay, because the Amazon Echo Show and all the Echo devices do have third-party apps.
Yeah.
So you're saying that's like a distinct difference. So this is just the software that Facebook has built. It's mostly for video conferencing, and kind of the add-on is that you get a little bit of Alexa in there as well, but not full Alexa.
Not full.
Because you don't get those third-party apps. Okay, so interesting. So, and why would people be freaking out about this? Can you explain to the viewers, to the listeners, what made this such a peculiar announcement, and why people were so disturbed by Facebook, going forth with this?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook has had a very rocky year in terms of privacy. So them wanting to put a product with a camera in your home is definitely concerning. Just a few weeks back, they had a big hack where tokens got taken out of, and then they dealt with Cambridge Analytica with user information going away and being used in elections. So it's kind of a tightrope for Facebook to be walking. I mean, do you expect people to pay $199 to have a device for video calling over Messenger, watching some content on Facebook, very limited smart assistant stuff, or would you go out and buy like a Google Home Hub for $150 or, an Echo Show for a little bit more?
This comes at a really peculiar time. It seems like a really strange time for Facebook to be releasing this, because the company literally just announced that 50 million accounts were hacked. And so I think that's the largest hack that's ever been committed against the company. And so 50 million users exploited all of their personal information readily available for hackers. And Facebook quietly disclosed this during kind of a busy news week. So the news was probably buried for a lot of people. But as tech journalists are digging into this and trying to figure out what exactly this means, what's at risk, and what information we have to be worried about, Facebook goes ahead and announces a new device to gather more information about you. And this is supposed to sit directly in your home. And they want people to interact with this on a daily basis. Do you think that's a little brazen, in your opinion, or do you think that this is a totally fair thing for Facebook to do?
100% brazen. It's a weird announcement. It almost seems like their product teams and their marketing teams were not aligned at all. They were kind of doing damage control with this massive hack for multiple days. And they do have like some privacy stuff on it. They give you a physical camera lens to cover it. It's like a physical thing that you cover the camera with, which is like, seems, I don't know, like kind of halving it a little bit to some degree. But I think you're right. It's a weird time to be like, hey, we're Facebook. We just had this huge hack. Why not spend $200 and buy a smart display for your house? You know, let Facebook into your home, essentially. And it's weird. It doesn't have that many features. They haven't said anything. Like, there's a big thing about privacy on it, but they haven't said much about it.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to me that this comes just as Americans are trusting Facebook less than ever before. You know, there's a Reuters poll that was conducted or published back in March that talks about how people are trusting Facebook less than ever before. Let's see. 41% of Americans trust Facebook to obey laws that protect their personal information, compared with 66% who said they trust Amazon. So, and 62% who said they trust Google, et cetera, et cetera. So the study goes on to explain how Americans trust Facebook much less than they trust Amazon, trust Google, and a lot of other big tech companies. And this was all before Facebook announced this 50 million users that had been exploited in this hack. So it just seems to me like this is a really weird time to roll this out. I know that there were reports that Facebook wanted to announce this in April and they held back because of the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Yeah. And it's funny that the latest announcement was even bigger. The impact was bigger than the Cambridge Analytica scandal. There was more data readily available on people, and yet Facebook just went ahead and pushed this thing out anyways. It seems like kind of a weird time for the company. How do you see Facebook earning people's trust back, and do you think they can sell this device in the meantime?
I don't see this as the ticket to earning trust back at all. I mean, I think it's like pay us for using your data inappropriately, essentially, and not protecting it. So I think Facebook, rather than pushing hardware, should go back, re-up. You know, they always talk how good their software is and how good their encryption is. How about go back, double down on that, and then release this hardware when Facebook is back in our lives as this tool and this network that's invaluable.
Yeah, I totally agree there. Jake, you have any final thoughts on Facebook Portal?
I'm not going for one. Are you?
I will not be buying one either. Yeah. Sorry, Facebook. Thanks so much for joining us on another episode of Technically Speaking. We'll see you back here next week with more tech news.